Namaskar viewers, hello and welcome to Sunset TV. I'm Tina Jha, you're watching Perspective. The Indian economy is projected to grow between 6.8 to 7.2% in 2026-27, according to the Economic Survey 2025-26, which has also upgraded India's potential growth rate to 7%, up from 6.5% estimated 3 years ago. Tabled in Parliament by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman on Thursday, the survey strikes an optimistic note at a time when the global economy is facing heightened trade uncertainty and the dampening effects of high tariffs on business confidence. Chief Economic Advisor Dr. Anant Dageshwaran, who authored the survey along with officials from the Finance Ministry, has described India's growth momentum as healthy and the overall outlook as favourable. Inflation remains largely under control, rainfall and agricultural prospects are supportive, external liabilities are low, banks are all in strong health, liquidity conditions are comfortable, credit growth remains steady, corporate balance sheets are robust, and the overall flow of funds to the commercial sector continues to be resilient. In fact, the Chief Economic Advisor has described India as an oasis of economic performance in the global landscape, emphasizing that the country's external stability has been a key pillar supporting domestic economic strength and helping India stay relatively insulated from the global volatility. At the same time, he has cautioned that the impact of global shocks could emerge with a lag, underscoring the need for continued policy vigilance. So in the 799-page document, which is divided into 16 parts, the survey argues that India's challenge is not merely to design better policies, but to ensure that rules, incentives and administrative responses actively strengthen national resilience. In this context, the Chief Economic Advisor notes that India's journey from Swadeshi to strategic resilience and eventually to strategic indispensability will depend not only on how fast the economy grows, but on whether domestic capabilities become deeply embedded in global production systems in ways that will enhance reliability, learning and external stability. To discuss the pathways that the economic survey outlines and how India can turn the global headwinds into tailwinds in pursuit of its economic ambitions, we are joined today by distinguished guests. I'm delighted to welcome on the program Mr. Sujit Kumar, Member of Parliament. He represents the BJP in Rajya Sabha, Mr. Shubhamoy Bhattacharjee, Senior Journalist, and Dr. Charan Singh, CEO, eGrow Foundation. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on this very important telecast, analysing the Economic Survey 2025-26. So before we delve deeper into the details of the substance, Mr. Bhattacharjee, what has been highlighted also is the reconfiguration of the Economic Survey in terms of the length and breadth of the areas that it has covered, but also in terms of how it has prioritized key sectors which are driving national growth. As someone who's been analyzing economic survey year after year, what are some of the most visible and striking changes that you find in the economic survey 2025-26?
We are particularly interested in about the economic survey is what are the issues that are being really covered, but more than that, what is it that's talking about in the years ahead. Right. And you know why I'm saying so is because this economic survey comes at a time when in everything within India, the economic management has been spot on. What is not spot on is what is happening globally. And that is the biggest challenge that India is facing right now. As you rightly pointed out, that the global uncertainties, and in fact, the word that he uses is economic statecraft. That economic statecraft, a la something what has happened in history, sometime in Athens or in Rome or in other times, seems to have come back to India, to the globe at the cost of cooperative globalization, and that is something which needs to be particularly looked at and particularly measured up to. So, what are the challenges that India faces in this world, and how India should take an offensive strategy is the basis on which this economic survey has been looked at. So it's not about saying that there are these challenges, we need to have a defensive position, or we need to secure our interests. We have secured our interests. What are the things that we need to do to go on the offensive is the theme of the economic survey. And I think that is a very interesting change that is coming through, because I suspect that is what the government's point of view is also. Yeah.
That's right. In fact, even in the President's address, Mr. Kumar, we heard today in the economic survey, the central theme is about how, despite the global uncertainties, it's India's resilience that has brought us to such remarkable growth, and the thrust now is on growth-oriented measures that will sustain this momentum. Before we talk about the future outlook and how it will take us closer to our Viksit Bharat vision, as a member of the ruling party, what would you describe as some of the key strengths that have enabled this resilience, that have helped India not just insulate itself from the global uncertainties, but at the same time drive economic growth? For the fourth consecutive year, India continues to remain the fastest growing large economy.
Well, I completely echo what Mr. Bhattacharjee just said. India's economic management has been spot on, despite the headwinds, despite the global uncertainty that we see today. And the prime factor for this is decisive leadership. Look, just it's a couple of numbers. The fiscal deficit is below the target. The inflation is at 1.7%, 1.7, 1.8. The foreign exchange reserves are healthy, $700 billion plus dollars. GST collection has been record 18 lakh crore, so on and so forth. I could go on and on and on. You name any number. Today we are looking at promising data. And this is precisely because of prudence, economic management, prudence, fiscal management. And despite what's happening in the Middle East, despite what's happening with Russia, Ukraine, despite the daily tantrums of President Trump, India has been an oasis of economic stability, economic sanctity, and economic resilience, as has been pointed out by CEA. And just a couple of minutes ago, I was listening to the World Bank President, Mr. Banga, and he also was profusely complimenting the government for managing the economy so well, despite what's going on across the world, across the globe. And not only are we the fastest growing major economy, we are also the most stable economy in the world today, one of the most certainly in the world today. And this is a tribute to the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So I think the key factors are, yes, of course, the monsoon has helped the record collection of income tax and GST and all those things have definitely helped us. But at the end of the day, you can't, year on year, you can't achieve this kind of numbers unless you have very, very good leadership at the helm.
Okay, Dr. Singh, your perspective on what has been the biggest change in our growth model that has worked for us, because we've seen repeated disruptions, beginning with COVID to the supply chain disruptions and then the geopolitical shifts, disruption after disruption, global headwinds, but we've managed to keep ourselves insulated. In terms of some of the policy measures that have worked in our favor, what is it that you see as the backbone of this change that has helped us absorb the global shocks relatively better than the advanced economies, but also compared to the previous decades, we are much more resilient in our growth?
The most important thing that I see is the persistency in good policies that we have pursued. You have seen in the survey today, the financial sector is robust. The non-performing assets of the financial sector, the banking sector, are amongst the lowest. The deficit is in control. The debt is on its trajectory downwards. What more can you ask? While passing through the biggest crisis, COVID, we have still been able to maintain our balance. In addition, despite the challenges that were coming from across the world, we continued with our solid policies. We went ahead with the GST reforms, we did the direct taxes reforms, we did labor reforms. In addition, despite again the global challenges and the Trump tantrums which have just been mentioned about, our exports have been doing well. The PLI scheme was there and we went ahead with that PLI scheme, strengthening it. Now, even 2 days back, we have signed the mother of all trade agreements with European Union. And going by today's news items, we could be pretty close to signing another trade agreement with the US. So the persistency in policies, the fiscal consolidation, the financial sector reforms in the real sector, and with that, the thought that we, in view of the global uncertainty, need to secure our export markets, we have been signing trade agreements. Over and above it, if you look in the last few years, the way we have gone around looking at the MSME sector, that's the most important sector we have in our country after agriculture because it generates employment for millions of people. It contributes to export, it contributes to manufacturing. We have been redefining what MSME sector is. We have been consolidating that sector, and that is why I think the growth trajectory is so beautiful. We are not only the fastest growing economy in the world, we are a very stable economy in the world. Our inflation is amongst the lowest in the world today. What more to ask for? This is, I think, the golden era. All the growth projections that were done, either by an international agency or by the Reserve Bank or by the government itself, we have outpaced that. And now, against the targets of 6.5, 6.7, we are on the verge of 7 to 7.5% growth. And all this is happening because there is political stability in the country. That is, I think, the mantra. With the political stability in the country, we are able to achieve proper economic policy, economic growth, something now that is positioning us into Viksit Bharat in a safe zone.
That's right. In fact, that is what led the chief economic advisor to even describe India as an oasis of economic performance amid the global uncertainties. Mr. Kumar, what was interesting from the press conference that the CEA addressed just a short while ago? He suggests that even global fragmentation can create huge opportunities for India. So it's not just about the resilience, it's also about making India relevant and a trusted and reliable partner in the global supply chain at a time when we are seeing that countries are diversifying away from single sources. That is something that India has turned into its strength. Is it only policy, or do you think it's a far-sighted vision, perhaps something that we have in mind in terms of a roadmap that we have created towards becoming a Viksit Bharat, and which is in line with our foreign policy, which is not just about development for us, but taking along the other countries as well. So the concept of development partnership along with developing supply chains and not closing our doors on economies like the first world is at the moment doing.
See, economic policy and foreign policy are not binary. They are not. They complement each other. So we have a government where economic policy is foreign policy is an extension of our economic policy and vice versa. In fact, if you look at our foreign policy, if you look at the engagements, whether it's with EU or Australia or now with the US or with the global South, it has been largely to protect the economic interest and other interests of the country. In fact, this is why we did not join RCEP. This is why we said no to the unreasonable demands of President Trump. In fact, the EU FTA has been also, if you ask any expert, they will say that it has been largely beneficial to Indian interest of Indian MSMEs, farmers. Mr. Singh spoke about MSMEs. So, when the government is very clear that it will adopt a nation-first policy. Nation-first policy is the paramount philosophy on which this government works, and Viksit Bharat is the vision that we are aiming at, and systematically every single policy of the government is towards that direction. Mr. Singh mentioned a couple of reforms. Let me tell you, the Jan Biswas bill. I was part of the joint parliamentary committee which passed, which was looking at the Jan Biswas 1.0. 189 laws pertaining to 42 different ministries and departments, which was in our statute book, were done away with. And this has significantly helped in simplifying business processes. I remember I used to work for the World Economic Forum, and the WEF publishes ease of doing business. The World Bank also does so, and India was ranked only 114 in that ranking in the 2019-20 ranking. And then in the recent ranking, we are at a very, very healthy rank. I think it's 54 or some odd rank. So this has been largely possible because of the ease of doing business, because of the reforms which has been spoken about, and because of the fact that you cannot have a Viksit Bharat goal without having a strong economy, without having a resilient economy. So and that also goes with the foreign policy. So this, I think, is an alignment of foreign policy, defense policy, strategic interest, and economic policy that we are
That's
looking
right.
at
In
today.
fact, this document, in more ways than one, it's not just an annual report of sorts about the state of the economy anymore. It is a far-sighted document talking about the vision that we have, which will take us closer to our economic prospects. Since you spoke about reforms, that leads me to the question on deregulation, trust-based compliance, state capacity that the economic survey talks about. Mr. Bhattacharjee, deregulation is something that has found mention in economic surveys over the years. Which are the areas that the CEA has been pointing out towards deregulation? And when he talks about trust-based compliance, what are the reforms that he says are necessary to strengthen state capacity to ensure that the growth which we have witnessed we are able to sustain that kind of momentum, but most importantly, which give us an edge, which to translate these challenges into the long-term economic opportunities? That's the larger goal.
One of the first things that you'd notice is that he's talking about, and I refer to the issue of taxation, direct taxes. And there's a box there which talks about how nudge economics has actually helped rush up the number of people who are filing tax returns. It has gone up from 6.8 to something like 9.2 crores. Now, those are phenomenal numbers. Similarly, the number of people who have given details of their foreign holdings of investments, those are phenomenal. The amount of money that people have actually sort of adjusted on something like 2,000 by filing revised income tax returns is also phenomenal. So, these are some things which the government has actually been able to do by making people believe in the power of persuasion and in the capacity of the government to deliver and to deliver consistently and to use information technology, use modern administrative skills to make people believe and to make people adhere to a rules-based system. In fact, he makes it very clear that this is the same policy which should be used for also in handling of the state-level enterprises. So he has made it a point that either the company law be amended to allow for government companies to be defined as government company even when there's less than 51% in shareholding in it, or the government could go even lower. Can actually divest in that company wholly and yet retain that moniker of a government company by bringing in a suitable clause. Now, these are exceptionally bright ideas which are going to help the government because, the limits of how further tax can be made are being reached. So we have to look at non-tax revenue. And as you can see that those can come only by pushing deregulation and by pushing powerful ideas like these into the realm of state policies, and they can then create development, advantages for us in a most volatile world. Yes.
That's right. Since you spoke of advantages, another recommendation, another suggestion to say, Professor Singh, has been on process reforms. So while we've seen significant policy measures to, ensure ease of doing business, still we see in the economic survey, it indicates that there is scope to further simplify the rules and make the system more business friendly. How important is it going forth to make that necessary and timely change give us the competitive advantage if we are to attract global businesses?
A couple of things, Tina, I'd like to mention. One, of course, you mentioned about the process reforms, and that's very, very important. If you want to encourage MSMEs, like keep interacting with the MSMEs and ease of doing business, there are so many processes that they get stuck in, and those need to be taken care. There's a fantastic paper by Sanjeev Sanyal, who's in the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. Right. He has been also talking at length about the process reforms. But I would like to mention two things here. One is, and that I think is very important, which has come up in this survey, very well documented, the quality of expenditure change that is taking. You look at the quality of expenditure change from the revenue expenditure to the capital expenditure, the way it is rising, I think it's fantastic. The other is the debt to GDP ratio. In most countries of the world, debt to GDP ratio is rising or stable. In our country, the trajectory is downwards. I think that is something which we really need to address. Now, again, coming back to the process reforms, I would like to mention if you want to encourage MSMEs in the country, there are too many hassles that the MSMEs have in flourishing, in even registering. And now, if they have to register properly, they have to go through the digital platforms. In those digital platforms, also, there are challenges which need to be addressed, even in the process of registration. Then the clarifications in terms of the taxation laws, then there is need for simplification there too. While the government has to a great extent simplified the tax laws, and that is what has resulted in higher compliance and higher large number of people joining the tax band, there is still a challenge when it comes to MSMEs. Now, many a times, many people in the MSME sector tell me, while they talk of ease of doing business, the educated ones are facing challenges. What about the uneducated ones? So, therefore, at every level, we will have to look into the processes which will then make life easy of the businessman. Now, it is that very sector, the private sector, and that's why I'm very happy with the word that has been used in the survey, the statecraft. It is very important that in days to come, over the next few decades, with the AI setting in, the private sector will play a very important role. And when we say the private sector, we have in mind the MSME sector. Unless there is seamless procedural solutions or there is seamless correction in the processes, everything happening sequentially one after the other, be it digital, be it otherwise one window, you will have challenges, and that will not result in growth, not result in output, not result in productivity and efficiency. So I think process reforms is not much literature up there in the rest of the world, but in our country, this issue has been flagged and rightly flagged. These are little things which stop, which are sort of stumbling blocks in ease of doing business, and these need to be corrected.
That's right. In fact, the survey mentions a very important line. It says the process reforms perhaps are needed more than the policy reforms which we've seen in recent years in order to sustain that momentum. Mr. Kumar, I'll come to the three global scenarios that the survey also highlights for 2026. It's a comprehensive document, and it won't be possible for us to cover sector-wise growth projections and the future outlook that the survey has given. But since this forms the theme of the economic survey 2025-26, it presents three global scenarios. It says managed disorder, a disorderly multipolar breakdown, and a systemic shock cascade is what could be the three possible global scenarios for 2026. Which of these do you see as the most plausible? But in terms of how we've been preparing, in terms of how we've been able to keep ourselves insulated from the shocks, how do you think we are preparing in terms of not just policy, but at the reforms level, which will sustain our growth momentum, but at the same time, it will save us from the future shocks that the survey points out?
I am a founder member of FISME, which stands for the Friends of MSME in the Parliament. And let me assure Mr. Singh and the entire nation that government is cognizant of the issues of MSMEs. In fact, we have had extensive interaction with the Honorable Finance Minister. When I say we, I mean the MSMEs, and also with the ministry officials, along with a couple of fellow MPs who are part of FISME. And the government is very proactive in resolving the issues of MSMEs. You will see much more reforms with regards to IBC, with regards to taxation, with regards to incorporation hassles. being taken care of in the coming days. Now, I would not. We haven't discussed judicial reform. In my view, that is the single most reform which is crying, which is the the crying need of the nation today. I'm a lawyer as well, and I'm an arbitrator. And today you have a funny situation where two Indian entities are arbitrating in London or in Singapore. Why? Because even after capital award in India, they will have to, one of the parties will go to the court challenging it under Section 34 of the Arbitration Act. And pretty much all our courts are choked up. It takes about 10 years to enforce a contract in India. So this is the single biggest reform which is needed. And the Honorable Prime Minister is very, very keen on and making it happen. Now, coming back to your, this global issue of, a systemic failure or the breakdown of the multipolarity, India has always supported multipolarity. India has, in fact, even at the expense of being isolated, India has been pursuing its sovereign interest. We saw that during Operation Sindoor. We have seen it since 2014. And strategic autonomy is the foreign policy mantra of our nation today. So, irrespective of what happens in the rest of India, India will always stand for its economic right, for its national interest, because we understand that we have to reach our goal of a Viksit Bharat by 2047. We have to be economically self-reliant. We have to be Atmanirbhar. And this is why the stress on Atmanirbharta, this is why the stress on Swadeshi by Honorable Prime Minister. So I do understand that, the world is going through a lot of turmoil and a lot of flux, both in geopolitics and geoeconomics. But the way we have managed it, we are certain to come out of it with the least disruptions to our economy and to our national interest.
Okay, Mr. Kumar, since you have a flight to catch, thank you so much for joining in. I'll take one last question from Mr. Bhattacharjee about the survey saying that India's goal is to move from strategic resilience to strategic indispensability. In that regard, if you could lay out for us which sectors, which capabilities will perhaps make India indispensable to the world economy. We've already seen how the world has begun to shift its perception about India, begun to see India as an important one. And in that context, the FTAs that we've been signing with countries, especially the one that we signed recently with the EU, speaks volumes about that kind of shift. But in terms of making India indispensable to the global supply chains, to the global economic landscape, where does the potential lie?
Broadly about discovering the heft that lies within India. You know what it means, and I was reading the survey very carefully there. There are two chapters there which discusses this theme in detail. And what the CA and his team have worked out is that essentially India is sort of coming to discover its sweet spot. Now, which sector does it mean? Now, it could mean, as Dr. Chanjit Singh was talking about, MSME. It could also mean the frontier technologies, where we are investing very heavily in terms of the semiconductor, the AI things, the quantum technologies. It could also mean being the best reservoir of skilled workers in the world. Right. The world is rapidly going through a population, sort of collapse. And within that, India's pool of trained manpower, trained human power, could be a huge change maker. It's already being felt. So it will come in unusual ways, but what it will not come is that India will not face a shock. Rather, what will come along is that India is going to be the harbinger of new ideas and being able to take on new challenges. The fact that we now have globally the third largest set of startups shows you that how India's ecosystem has developed from being just an employer-employee relationship to a relationship where people are developing their own ideas of innovation. So these are the changes which are taking place. And what the center is doing is laying out the macroeconomic framework for people to handle. What will happen is for the states now to take on the responsibility of actually guiding their people in their own ways to take on opportunities as and when they develop. And they will be across multifarious sectors. But the three things out there will be, A, having your pool of young people, secondly, the technology to be able to take them on, and third, the daring to be able to go on for it. And I'll stop there.
That's right. I think that clearly is the message, that despite the uncertainties that prevail, it also provides us with a historic opportunity. We've shown earlier how we create opportunities in crises. This is our moment. Perhaps that's what the survey has been trying to indicate in terms of how we've adapted to these crises, in terms of how we've built resilience. And now the challenge is to stay on course of that path which will lead us to our economic ambitions. Time allows us to take up only that much on the program, gentlemen. We will, in due course, over the next few days, try and discuss key recommendations, cover the key sectors that the survey speaks about. But on this telecast, we have very limited time. Thank you once again for joining in and sharing your thoughts with us and our viewers. To you viewers, thank you very much for your time as well.
To watch more programs of Sunset TV, subscribe to our YouTube channel and don't forget to like and share them.